name is Gloria and welcome back to another video. I'm going to be talking about some books that I hauled onto my shelves. Most of these books I got at the thrift store. Then I'll talk about some books that I bought online. The first category of books that I got were historical fiction. I'm a big historical fiction fan, particularly World War II historical fiction, but I'll read about pretty much anything. These were all just popular, I believe, in 2019 Goodreads lists. The first book I hauled was Orphan Train. I believe it connects a story of two different strangers, and then there's a girl telling a story on a train. I just know that this is a very popular historical fiction book, so I'm excited to read it. And it's quite short compared to most. It's only 270 pages. The next book that I hauled is The Alice Network by Kate Quinn. I also know that this author wrote The Huntress, which is another popular book. I haven't read either yet. I also follow Reese Witherspoon's book club, and this was one of her book club picks a while ago. This one's also about World War II, set in Nazi-occupied France in 1947, and it looks like it also goes back in time to 1915, so there's dual timelines in this story as well. Other than that, I don't know much about it, but I know that I'm probably gonna love it. So I'm excited to read this one. And from there, the next book I have is Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. This is also historical fiction set in America in the 1930s, based in Memphis, Tennessee. It tells a story of countless children who were part of this orphanage. I'm assuming that there's some tragedy that happens with these children in the orphanage. I have then two nonfictions that I hauled. So we have Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. I believe this is a memoir of his life in a concentration camp. I know that this was a top book and a 5-star rating from one of my friends, so I just usually look at people's favorites books and put those on my TBR, but I saw this one and wanted to pick it up because I love World War II, and I'm sure that this is very tragic, but I'm excited to read it and to learn from it. And then I also got Killers of the Flower Moon, The Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI by David Graham. This is also one of the top books under the history and biography genres on Goodreads, and I have a few friends on Instagram that I know that have recommended it before and rated it high. I usually really like true crime stories, and I thought this was a good mix of history and true crime. So this book follows the Osage murders, which the Osage are a indigenous community in the 1920s in America, and they were very wealthy because their lands were on top of oil, and so the community was a very wealthy community, and then all of a sudden they start getting killed off, and there are different investigators trying to figure out what's going on. And I know that this was just around the time that the FBI was established, so they're solving this case. Other than that, I don't know much about it, but I know that it is very popular and highly rated, so I'm excited to read this one. My next category of books I'm calling books that are on everyone's must-read before you die lists, or classics. I'm just combining those. So the very first one I have is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. This is one of my favorite movies. I love this movie so much, and so I'm really excited to read the book. I just know that this is a must-read classic. Because it's one of my favorite movies, I know that this might become one of my favorite books. The next two are both by Khaled Hosseini, The Kite Runner and A Thousand Splendid Suns. These are both on all the top read books. I know a lot of people read these in school. I believe these are both set in India or maybe the Middle East. I'm not entirely sure what these are about. I just know that they're both very popular books and that they are must-read. So I'm excited to add both of these to my shelves and get them read. Next, I have To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I did read this book in school. I believe it was freshman year, maybe sophomore year. I remember liking it. I believe I did a project about it, but I wanted to own it and I wanted to reread it again. This edition is basically brand new, and it was like $2 at Goodwill, so that's why I wanted to own it. Next, I have Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. I actually have watched, I believe, the first season of The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu. It was pretty intense, but I know that I liked it. But this book has been around for a while, and I know that Margaret Atwood's a very popular author, and she's written a ton of good books. So I'm excited to dive into this one. This is based on a futuristic world where women are only good for having children, and the rich and austere women hire these handmaids because most of the women can't give birth. There's fertility issues, and so there's only certain women that are put aside into this society of handmaids that can actually still give birth, and they are being forced to be bred like cattle in these homes so that they can give birth and prolong society. I'm interested to see if I get anything from this book that's different than the show, since the show probably goes deeper and farther in time than maybe this book goes. But if I like this one, I'll probably read The Testaments, which is, I believe, the sequel to this book. And finally, I have Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I've never read a lot of these classics in school, so I don't know anything about this book. I just know that this is a popular must-read book, and the edition and this quality of the book was in really good condition at Goodwill, and it was, again, like $2, so I thought I would own it and hopefully one day pick it up and read it. My next category of books is just fiction or literary fiction. This one technically might be historical fiction and be on the wrong list, because I know Kristen Hanna wrote The Nightingale, which is one of my favorite books, but it's a mother and daughter story and it's set in Alaska. So I'm not sure if it ties into different historical events that are going on in the world during that time, but I know that I love The Nightingale and I like the author, so I want to read this one. And I know that this is on a lot of people's lists. I wanted to read it by the end of this year, so we'll see if I get to it. And here I have 2 Frederick Bachman books. I've never read anything by him before. I know A Man Called Uwe is one of his popular books, I believe his first book, and then Beartown is the second one. But both of these were in really great condition at Goodwill, so that's why I bought them. I don't know anything about him except that he's Murphy Napier's favorite author on BookTube, and a lot of people rate his books very highly, so I wanted to own a couple, and I know that I want to read these. They're probably very emotional and moving, and I like those kinds of books, so we'll see if I like them. And finally, my last category is mysteries and thrillers. The first book here is The Beekeeper's Apprentice by Laurie R. King. This is a book in the Sherlock Holmes universe. In 1915, Sherlock Holmes is retired and quietly engaged in the study of honeybees when a young woman literally stumbles into him on the Sussex Downs. 15 years old, gawky, egotistical, and recently orphaned, the young married Russell displays an intellect to impress even Sherlock Holmes and match him wit for wit. Under his reluctant tutelage, this very modern 20th century woman proves a deft protege and a fitting partner for the Victorian detective. In their first case together, they must track down a kidnapped American senator's daughter and confront a truly cunning adversary, a bomber who has set tripwires for the sleuths and who will stop at nothing to end their partnership. One of the main reasons I love any books about beekeeping and honeybees is because my dad is a beekeeper and I actually work to sell honey for my family's business, so I will pick up pretty much any book that has honeybees on the cover, and this one was a must. I haven't actually read any Sherlock Holmes books at all. I have watched the BBC Sherlock series on Netflix, but I haven't read any Sherlock books, and I thought if I was gonna own any and read any, I might as well read the one about honeybees, or with honeybees in it. The next book that I hauled was Into the Water by Paula Hawkins. This is the author of The Girl on the Train, which I have read a few years ago. This one was on my list because I did like The Girl on the Train, so I wanted to see what this one was about. And I actually have read this one, and it will be in my October wrap-up. So this book follows a small town where a woman recently died and everyone thinks that she committed suicide, but her daughter who was left behind and her sister don't think that she committed suicide, but think that maybe she was murdered. And there have been other women in this town who have died in this same pond. It follows several detectives and several different characters in this town who may have been involved in some kind of way. You'll see what I rated it. Next I have The Women in the Window by A.J. Finn. This follows I believe the word is agoraphobic, a woman who doesn't leave her house and is afraid to leave her house, and so she's watching her neighbor's life unfold, and I'm assuming she probably witnesses a murder or something and has to leave her house and tell the story. I don't know anything else besides that, but I'm excited to read it. And then finally, I have The Wife Between Us by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. I don't know anything about this book except that, again, it is on a lot of people's must-read thriller lists, so excited to read that one. And finally, my last pile of books are ones that I bought online. Little Women, a classic I have never read. I watched the movie at the beginning of 2020 and I absolutely loved it, so I'm really excited to read this book and rewatch the movie because I loved it so much. And this is just the cutest little cover and the cutest edition, and I needed to have it. And green is one of my favorite colors, so I really love this one. And then we have Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I don't know much about this book except that it's a thriller and that there's a Netflix movie. I know it's a classic and a must-read. I believe it's in a gothic haunted kind of setting. So I really need to read this one because I want to watch the movie. And I got this one off Book Depository and I thought the cover was lovely and cool. And then both of these are books that I got from the library and I love them so much that I wanted to own them. If you watched my last wrap-up video, I talked about both of these. I got both of these off of Book Depository. City of Thieves by David Benioff. I really wanted to own it. Love this World War II historical fiction. And Salt to the Sea by Rita Sepetys. Also love this World War II historical fiction. I really like this cover and I haven't seen one like it before. Usually it's a realistic picture of an ocean wave with like a lifeboat thing. And I like more illustrated covers, so I really enjoy this one and wanted to own it. And my kind of rule with books that I want to actually own are books that I absolutely love, want to reread, and would recommend and loan out to anyone. I don't really want to keep books that I feel about, so I'll probably only have books on my shelves that are 4 stars or 5 stars, and the other ones I'd give away or donate. So that's my rule, and I'm currently on a book buying pause. We'll see what I get for Christmas. Maybe I'll get a few, but I definitely don't want to buy any more until I read some of these on the shelves. Thanks so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!